Hello, everyone, and thank you, Harshal, for that great introduction. I believe that I speak for everyone in attendance when I say that we're very happy that you and the entire Dyndrite team took an initiative to put together such a great virtual conference. I'm extremely impressed by the quality of topics and participants you guys have pulled together, and I'm proud to be a part of this. So, with that said, let's get into it. There we go. So I'm going to talk today about topics within the frame of the global disruption we're all facing, right? So I'm delivering this keynote from my home office. You may hear children fighting over the Nintendo Switch or Netflix remote in the background. I may freeze in the middle of this presentation due to connectivity issues rather than public speaking issues. And I could even potentially be delivering a successful keynote to begin this conference while wearing pajama pants, although I'm wearing jeans, just for the record. All this is new to me, and it's new to you, and it's all thanks to the COVID-19 virus and the massive social and economic change that's brought to all of us. But before I get into these topics, I did want to provide everyone here with a frame of how to view myself and my team within the context of HP. So with HP, we're focusing our investments in support of enabling our customers to scale with their adoption of additive. So this requires investments across a number of strategic areas and building infrastructure to support our customers' usage of our products, and then providing extra focus on additional requirements that are unique to major vertical industries. So, however, HP's commitment to having a dedicated organization to focus on the value propositions, user experience, and engineering excellence required to deliver digital-first solutions is very much a dedication that is unique to HP's approach to 3D printing and digital manufacturing. So it's within this area of responsibility that my team and I operate inside HP. And as a result, we look at the impacts of this disruption and the opportunities available through the lens of digital systems. And in order to understand the opportunities we have available to us, we must first understand the scope and impact of the disruption. So please buckle up while I share some pretty shocking numbers as to the scope and size of the impact that we're all facing. I'm going to start with the financial impact. So our financial systems are fundamentally intended to be leading indicators of the performance of the sectors that comprise our GDP. So they were the first systems that reacted to the news of the pandemic. And as we all know, if you've looked at your 401k, they reacted severely. The speed and size of this market decline was absolutely unlike anything we've seen before. Stock market losing a third of its value in a matter of weeks. And while our government did move fast to provide stimulus, the damage has already been done to the economy, and we're going to need to see in the coming months how the unemployment fully continues to affect industries to understand the true scope of this damage. But with the T-bill hovering around 0% and the largest stimulus in US history already passed, there's likely not much more that will be done to the US economy to further mitigate the impact or speed the recovery process in this area. And then as we double click into the manufacturing and supply chain sector and look at that impact, we see pretty similarly shocking numbers. The top row of stats that I'm sharing notes that a full 15% of the US economy is comprised of these manufacturing, transportation, and warehousing industries, and that these industries can see anywhere from a 5 to 10% decline year over year as a result of the pandemic. And historically, a decline of 5% in GDP means a 4-year recovery timeline. So I'm hopeful that the recovery time will be shorter. And even if I'm right, and it is shorter, the recovery time is still going to be longer than any of us like. The bottom row is a forward-looking survey from the National Association of Manufacturers. And the number of manufacturing companies that expect to have their operations disrupted from the virus are massive, as you can see, with over half expecting a need to change operations. It's a key point that we'll talk about in the opportunities, and close to 80% expecting some sort of financial impact. So when I looked at these numbers, I tried to dig in and say, what were the factors that led to such a rapid and precipitous decline, not just in our financial systems, but specifically in our manufacturing systems? And so, this disruption was really a number of factors that came together to explain why I think this impact is so great, but also why the opportunities will be equally great. So the virus began in China, the factory of the world, and initially disrupting the one area of the globe that has the biggest impact to component availability and global supply chains. So whereas we don't know where or when the next global pandemic will originate from, we must be prepared and do what we can to mitigate the impact if it does again happen in China. You know, I believe the vast majority of our products are produced with analog tooling, tools that are unable to adapt to what they produce. And while they're very efficient in producing the single thing they're designed to make, the lead time to respond to change is weeks at best, and most likely months. And then even if the tools could change faster and we could adapt to disruptions in the supply chain and manufacturing paradigms, the systems in place to understand how antiquated and outdated. The global manufacturing industry lags behind most other industries in adoption of available solutions to make better and faster decisions on data. And so all of this contributes to a manufacturing and supply chain system that focuses on steady state cost efficiency rather than agility and the ability to adapt. And so over the entire manufacturing industry, and for good reason, we have prioritized specialization over generalization, ensuring that we set up companies and systems to do one thing very well, rather than having flexibility to do many things maybe at a lower efficiency. And we valued centralized over distributed production, you know, focusing where labor cost is low and taking the hit on transportation lead times. And so these characteristics are baked in extremely deep to the manufacturing industry. They're not going to be easy to change. And as a result, you know, this impact will be felt for years. But with that said, you know, manufacturing isn't the only industry. Most industries have been unable to respond to this crisis. Like tourism, for example, is in a worse position even than manufacturing, because the industry is fairly limited in how they can continue to operate when the majority of the world is under lockdown. But within the manufacturing sector, we see huge promise that the additive manufacturing industry is responding tremendously to this crisis. As an industry, we are all stepping up to show the world that our technology is truly a bright spot in its ability to respond to this new threat. And we are bringing our unique technology to this battle, and the results are being noticed worldwide. So personally, I'm extremely proud to be a part of this industry when I see headlines like this. Just knowing that every major 3D printing OEM has shifted their internal production to focus on COVID-19 response, that tells me that I'm part of an industry that's making a real and genuine difference. The steps that we're all taking in this response are saving people's lives. And I just want to take a moment and let that sink in. You know, there are people that are alive today, either recovered from COVID-19 or that were prevented from acquiring the disease, that are alive today because of 3D printing. And that's amazing. I think it's amazing, and so does the world. You know, I grabbed just a few of the headlines that highlight the scope of this effort. You know, it's not just printer OEMs, but service bureaus and innovative companies that utilize additive manufacturing for their businesses. Many of them have completely changed their operations to focus on COVID response. And when you, as a company, have production tooling that can make anything, you have that freedom. And there's times where you may want to change your business in response to an outside stimulus. And the fact that as an industry, our technology enables that level of agility and adaptation, it's on full display right now. And so while the whole industry is responding in an unprecedented way, you know, here in HP, I do want to mention that we have been hit particularly hard. The main location for 3D operations in HP is Barcelona. And with Spain being one of the hardest hit countries, the dedication that my colleagues there have put forth is nothing short of amazing. The fight for them is personal, and the effort that they've put forth in their response is showing. So over 50,000 parts have been produced in our Barcelona facility to date, and local partners and customers are producing even more. Significant numbers of these parts have been given directly to hospitals, and to see personal thank you notes from doctors and frontline responders to HP is something that we share broadly inside HP, and it's been such a pleasant source of comfort when, you know, for the most part, you feel pretty helpless trapped in your house. Also, key HP customers in the area and around the world are also showing their dedication to this effort by similarly shifting production and donating significant portions of their parts to the medical teams that need them. So you can see some examples of the new designs that we've published on hp.com on the right-hand side of the screen. And we're working with over 600 internal and external volunteers to not only produce parts that are already approved for medical use, but also to innovate on new products that have increased value as a result of the pandemic. So this is requiring HP to engage with governments, both in the US and Europe, to improve the velocity in which these parts can be approved for use in medical settings. So this effort's absolutely critical to ensure that the rest of the links in the product delivery chain can be as fast and effective at managing high velocity innovation as they need to be to complement the additive manufacturing velocity that we can bring to bear. And so that velocity is a really critical part of this story. Not just that you can change your production, but you can do so in a very, very quick way. So an example of this is the development of a new face shield that we designed for the protection of medical professionals and frontline responders. And I know there's many of these designs out as a result of this across the industry. And so, but as you can see from the slide, the design was started a couple weeks ago on a Saturday because there's not much to do when you're stuck in your tiny European apartment, so you might as well design innovative new face shields. But by Monday, just 48 hours later, we had first prototypes. And because we're a global company, the work was able to continue around the clock with our San Diego office picking up when the Barcelona folks went to bed. And by Friday, we had face shields assembled and deployed at local hospitals. And to date, we've produced over 5,000 of them. And so this velocity is not unique. We're seeing this over and over again in response to the urgency of the situation. Unheard of response times and shifts in production are, again, saving people's lives. And final and most impactful example of these is a field ventilator designed by an engineer in our LATAP facility and then validated in partnership with Dr. Luis Blanc, who's a local expert in the Barcelona area in medical ventilation. So this is the first industrialized field 3D printed emergency respiration device to support hospitals and intensive care units. So it's used to support short-term manual ventilation of patients in emergency situations. And with the situation in Barcelona hospitals, pretty grim a few weeks ago, these devices were in wide use, and in some instances, the reason why patients were able to recover from the virus. So the notes from doctors at facilities that use these devices were particularly inspiring as they talked about the impact these devices had on their ability to care for patients. So these are great individual stories, but I want us to all take a step back and ask ourselves, what does all this innovation really mean in the long term, right? How can we take all the learnings we're getting at a tremendous rate and put them into a frame that continues to grow the opportunities for our industry after the pandemic has passed us? So I'd like to share that I really see COVID-19 as a true watershed moment in this industry. We have a unique, potentially once in a lifetime opportunity to change the trajectory and impact this industry has on the world forever going forward. When we look at this pre-COVID world, I'm sure many of you have had similar experiences when talking to potential customers. It's my experience that we are usually asked to fit an additive manufacturing value proposition into an analog manufacturing value chain, where they want to remove an analog process, insert an additive process, but keep everything else the same. Change nothing around workflow, change nothing around product development paradigms, end-to-end life cycle, right? And so as a result, we're forced to stifle the potential value that our technology can hold for customers. Again, because they have no interest in disrupting their existing product development and product supply chains. They've been convinced that leveraging the existing manufacturing paradigms that holds the best margin for their investors. And so, this work is mostly done independently, lacking true industry-wide standards for how AM can be incorporated into product development life cycles. We're on our own as we try and convince customers to adopt our technology, from art to part. But in this new paradigm, I truly do believe that COVID-19 will change many, if not all of these paradigms that our industry experiences. I think that customers are seeing the impact to their efficient but limited value chains, and they're going to be open to investment to prevent disruption in the future. They're going to be ready to innovate and change their product development and delivery paradigms to ensure that they can continue their business during the next pandemic. Some of this will be through business models. Some of it will be through, the way they deliver their products to their customers, innovation in that area. And some, and hopefully a significant portion of this will be realized directly through investment in additive manufacturing and digital capabilities. I believe that many of our major customers will soon have pandemic preparedness experts in senior positions, across their companies, from HR to IT to production and to supply chains. These experts are going to be key contacts for us to explain the value proposition of our technology and really help drive adoption at scales that we have not seen before in this pre-COVID world. And so what that might look like is, this illustrates my idea of the benefits that the AM industry can offer to product producers and OEMs. When faced with global changes, right, agility and velocity are the absolute best capabilities you can have in your possession. So we're seeing in real time how these traditional systems are failing us. And, the digital approach to product manufacturing and delivery, let's be honest, they're not able to support the breadth of products, right, or the level of complexity that the traditional systems can. But we have to start somewhere. And COVID has given us a tremendous opportunity to identify key products, at least in the medical industry, that can be produced with a digital supply chain. Right? And as our industry evolves, we're going to benefit from giving our customers options to produce parts in a way that minimizes reliance exclusively on large centralized production systems. When you look at the digital way to produce these parts, the cost per part may be higher today, but when you focus on the value, when you can deliver the right part to the right place, even in the face of a global disruption, the value that can be captured from that is exponentially higher than that increase in per part cost. And so finally, I think as an industry, we need to do a few things to really maximize the opportunity in front of us. So, I think first and foremost, continue the great work that we're doing on COVID-19 and use our collective voices to both educate and also promote the additive manufacturing's industry's unique ability to support continued operations in the face of this global disruption. It's going to be a collection of individual impactful stories that start to paint a complete picture about what an industry can do when they more readily adopt additive manufacturing. I think this story is absolutely strongest when everybody is telling their specific story. So, I'd encourage everybody listening to please, if you have a story, share it broadly and contribute to this global shift in perception of our industry. And the second, and I think potentially most important point that I'd like to bring up is the need for standards. I've been a part of other industries that have been developing standards, and to do it well, the benefits are tremendous. So as our industry matures, as the hunger and opportunity to adopt AM at scale grows and grows, I think we must focus on the ability to minimize friction for our customers. Each of them is going to have different applications and different systems that our technology must fit within. They'll also need to and want to adopt technologies from many different companies in the additive industry: hardware, materials, software, services. And so to ensure that we have standards promoting interoperability while protecting the rights of our digital rights of our customers, while also protecting the secret sauce that each one of us brings to the table, will be absolutely critical for growing adoption at the fastest rate of speed in a post-COVID world. And then lastly, I'd also like to suggest that each of us ask a tough question, especially when we have already done so much as an industry and contributed in such a meaningful way to fight COVID-19. But this is exactly the right time to be asking this question. How can we have done even better? What do we need to do now, when things, both right now and then when things are calm again, to be even better prepared for next time? I think that the amazing response that the additive manufacturing industry has had to COVID is a fundamental function of the capabilities that we bring to the table. But it's also a function of a lot of man hours, a lot of highly reactive, shifting responsibilities, shifting the work we do every day to support this effort. In the future, I'd like to see how can we set our systems up to respond to this change in a much more automated and digital way. It's not to discount any of the work we've done as individuals, but recognizing that these learnings that we have, the systems that we're implementing to be able to respond to COVID in such a rapid way, they can be implemented in digital systems, and we can offer this type of flexibility, agility, velocity for customers in a more turnkey way going forward. And so with that, I'd like to thank Dyndrite for giving me this platform to talk to you today about COVID and its opportunities. I believe that their commitment to moving this industry forward, is as unique as their technology, and both will be very important to realizing the opportunities we all have in front of us. So thank you for your time, and I'm ready to take some questions if we have them.
All right, thank you, Ryan. We are all so much appreciative to everyone who's working on this COVID-19 crisis. And again, we will have a networking session at the end of the day to keep chatting about this, but we do have some fantastic questions coming in. First one from an anonymous attendee. You mentioned distributed manufacturing. What about distributed part and product design? Do you foresee designers being compensated in a new way?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. So the way I like to think about this is that additive manufacturing is a new manufacturing process. And just like every object in your room around you, it was made by a manufacturing process. The new capabilities of this process are only going to be taken advantage of if we can change not only the workflows around how things are manufactured, but also our idea of what a product is and what goes into making a product. So I didn't talk specifically about radically changing the product development lifecycle, but I think that that's a key component as this grows. Fighting disruption, being able to recover from these types of events might be one of the initial hooks that drives broad adoption of additive technology in industries where previously it might have been hard to get a decent sized foothold. But long-term sustainability and growth will be driven by competitive advantages. So I do see huge new ways of being able to make products that are much, much more exciting to me personally as a software guy going forward. I think once this technology is more readily accepted and adopted, and product developers and designers think about additive first, you're going to see a natural progression in a product lifecycle from a waterfall approach where you got to get it perfectly right because you have to build 100,000 of them and cut steel tools, to a more agile approach where constant innovation, constant small batch production gets you to a better product for your customers much faster with minimal risks. And as a result of that, the ability to crowdsource or have distributed product development becomes a reality where anybody could submit a change to a product just like you're submitting a change to a GitHub repo. And while it'll take a while to get to there, I think that as part of those standards that I see, digital rights management is incredibly important for capturing and protecting value for the person who drove the innovation on that particular product. So very much so.
Great answer. There's a bit of a follow-up question from Dermot. How do you envision security of designs, intellectual property, and produced volumes?
Yeah, so I think that's along the same vein. So to do a digital rights management solution properly, it's much more than just encrypting the content. It's a way to create trust across all actors in a system. So I know that there's many companies in the industry that are have solutions in this space, utilizing different underlying technologies. And I think that really the only ingredient that's missing from this is, the industry being ready to adopt it. I think that I've seen a lot of technologies that have promise. I'd like to see it being done in a standardized way. So even if you're wrapping a particular part or protecting IP with this company's technology or that company's technology, you can enable a supply chain where they flow across those types of systems. But like many things that are great ideas, it's going to be very complex to implement well. You have to take into account a myriad of corner cases where the file was sent to a printer, but the printer failed to print before it completed that part. So how do you then, capture all of that, the aspect where, there was an attempt, but it didn't quite print it? Or what if it finished printing, but then during metrology, it wasn't to spec, right? So this is a very a complex problem that goes way beyond printing itself, or even just the design and submittal to a printer. So again, I think that a real solution is going to incorporate all those. I support those. I think a lot in the industry are thinking along those same lines. And what we're just missing is that really, really leaning in by a major customer to really drive the investment needed to mature the technology along these ways. But I support it. And if there's, opportunities that I see, I make sure that HP, from a digital systems perspective, is ready to adopt those types of solutions as they get more mature.
Okay, so we've got a question from Dylan Schickel. Most useful items are assemblies, and most assemblies have some parts that are made best, not 3D printed. Other digital technologies beyond additive manufacturing, for example, inkjet printing, CNC cutting, even machining, can all be leveraged to make a digitally manufactured part. Like the face shields, no one is printing a clear visor. So then question now, is HP or Dyndrite thinking about software that can wrap all digital manufacturing processes, including, for example, cut patterns, AM toolpaths, assembly instructions, into one platform?
Absolutely. So I think that, you have to understand that that's where this industry is going. If you can't digitize every aspect of that product creation set of instructions, then you're only delivering a tiny fraction of the value that's possible. Automation's key. High degrees of fidelity of the data from your process are key to being able to capture the advantage of digital manufacturing. So while we're very interested in understanding, in believing that the industry is going to get there, we're also very flexible in understanding how the industry gets there. So I think that, we're in a very exploratory phase right now where we understand that, today there's no one system that can do that. That can manage not just the additive manufacturing components of it, but then also to the point, right? You're not going to additively manufacture the clear plastic visor on a face shield, but you do want a digital manufacturing system that potentially cuts the right size face shields, or even cuts custom size face shields for the size of the person that's going to be using those. So getting to a system or systems that support that type of high flexibility and high velocity production is critical. But I think it's going to be a combined effort, and it's probably going to look, fairly one-off, at least for the short, medium term. But going forward, I think that's exactly where the industry needs to go. I think we've seen a lot of positive feedback when discussing those types of topics with partners and customers. So I'm anxious to see how that all comes together. And at HP, we are looking to see how we can support that as well.
All right. Great answer, Ryan. That's definitely where the future is going. Let's see. After this, I would like to bring on Harshal. We've got another one from Rupinder. I applaud HP in developing COVID-19. Do you think additive manufacturing will be recognized as an essential service by governments? And then a follow-up, is HP participating in any advisory panels?
Sorry, I had a connectivity issue there for a little bit at the end. So all I heard was, am I participating in, is HP participating in advisory panels? Could you give a little bit more context?
Yes, so Do you think additive manufacturing will be recognized as an essential service by governments? And follow-up, is HP participating in any advisory panels with the White House?
Yes, so our previous CTO, Shane Wall, was on the government's White House's advisory panel for science and industry, I believe. But no, absolutely. I think HP, one of the great things about working with HP is that we can use our existing footprint in other areas to promote these types of discussions at a higher level with governments and with industry councils and groups. So we're getting heavily involved with a number of ISO standards, but also with the government to discuss this. I think that it's very much evolving space right now, but our engagement with medical bodies and with these approval processes for these innovative products in the medical space are really starting to come to the forefront HP-wide with our professionals that focus on government relations. And so I know for a fact that I believe within a few weeks to months we'll have a really strong dedicated effort to promote this within governments and industry. So I'm really happy that again, HP is recognizing the value that this is bringing. This unique response to COVID is at the forefront of a lot of the internal communications we do to our employees around the world, and as a result, we are dedicating efforts to further this. Like I said, how can we do better next time? How can we make sure that governments recognize these opportunities? And I know that that's happening primarily in Europe and the US, but also as we see around the world.
All right, thank you, Ryan. I think so too. I think we're going to be even more essential in the future. All right, I'd like to bring back Harshal for one last question. So from an anonymous attendee, how does Dyndrite help HP to achieve its mission? Hey, Harshal.
So I'd say, I'll let Ryan really answer this question, but I think the key here is, I think one key aspect is by honestly bringing this community together, right? So I think it's clear that not, every company has multiple types of technologies and things. And so I think it would be foolish to say that, any specific printer company is going to dominate a given specific industry. It's going to take a whole global effort here. And so I think one of the key things that we honestly are helping not only HP with, but all the other printer companies with, is bringing together all the issues that everyone is facing so that we can honestly solve them together.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think, hopefully it was evident in my talk that I don't see this as, HP's problem to solve. I see this as the additive manufacturing industry's problem to solve. And Dyndrite's approach to fostering a common set of, tools and solutions that each company can take and utilize to the best effort for our unique processes is really powerful. I think, when you look at change in other industries as they mature, you get a more sophisticated view of how each company can do their particular value propositions to promote their unique market value to the customers, while also not wasting time reinventing the wheel 20 different ways. So as HP evolves, our digital assets that need to go in and around the printer to promote our value propositions of our devices, doing so in a way that also reduces friction for companies that, again, are adopting additive at scale is critical. And so continuing to work with Dyndrite in that way, I think, is extremely important for HP's future. And I hope other OEMs feel the same way.
All right, thank you, Ryan. Harshal, I think you had a few closing thoughts, and then we'll cover our break items.
Yep, so I wanted to thank Ryan for giving an awesome keynote and Q&A, and wanted to thank HP for sponsoring the event. And I wanted to, again, thank the community for joining us this morning, and honestly, all the awesome questions that are coming in. I hope you enjoy the rest of the event. We're going to go into basically a 15-minute break, and then Kevin from Renishaw is going to come with his talk. So thank you again, and see you in about 15 minutes.